day, good day. All right, so what I wanted to do is to build more brand loyalty, to reach out to the people, to hit them right where they're sitting at, and use the day of the sun, or what you may have come to know as Sunday, as a day to further inform the people, to bring us out of deceptions, misconceptions, and error, okay? And so the only way that I can think to do that and be successful at it is to use the platform, to expand the platform, as it were. I'm not afraid of the religious topic. Look, I have a lot of experience in it. I've raised in it for 40 plus years, the Bible, and church school, went to a private school and what have you. So I do have a little bit of authority on the topic, being that how many of you know that if you go to school for 4 years, you are considered to have attained the bachelor degree? If you go to school for 6 to 8 years, you get your master's degree or what have you, or perhaps it's 10, I'm not even sure, and then on to the PhD and all and what have you. So I'd say with 40 or 30, let's say 30, let's be fair, let's say at 35 plus years of experience in the way of religion, I've pretty much gone on beyond a master's degree, let's just say, or PhD or whatever, okay? So with that being said, humbly, mind you, but this is a fun topic for me because when you come out of the darkness and into the light, and things begin to illuminate, and you start to see things for what they really are, it becomes kind of comical, as it were, all right? And how the mind can be impressed or impression to and indoctrinated to toe the line, as it were, in the narrative of man. And that's what we're going to uncover here today. So if you are on board with me and strapped in, I care not really whether you take the topic or the information personal, because I'm coming right from the book. I'm coming right from sources that you can argue if you want to, but they're there and I'm going to use them. I don't cringe or fear information, all right? And neither should you, all right? You always should be open. And anything or any religion or any man that tells you that you should be afraid to open your mind to gather information is usually out to control you and to keep you from seeing what has become known as the light. And so that's not going to happen here, all right? So let's get it going. All right, we're going to go right to the internet. In fact, oh, my bad. Let me fix that. We're not going to go there. For some reason, that's the wrong one. All right. We're going to go first to a book. Let me see if I can get this to work here. All right. It's a very delicate book. I have to be very careful with it. It's very old. I'll see if I can give you a little demonstration here. This is called The History. Oh, man. History of the United States of America. And I just lost my page, didn't I? It's called The History of the United States of America. It's coming apart here. It's 1927. You can see there, the Macmillan Company. And I think Macmillan, correct me if I'm wrong, was the same people that wrote the books in most of our schools and what have you. Now I got to find my page again. I flipped off. Let's see. Was it Macmillan? I think it was. Let's see here if I can find my page again. Okay. Where'd you go? All right, hold on. Let's see if I can find it real fast. Stay right where you are. Don't move it. All right, I think I found my place. Took me a moment. I had to pause the video and everything, but we're back. All right, so I just want to take a little bit from this book here just to kind of go over religion, the church, etc., etc., all right? So humor me. Let's learn a little something here. All right, so we'll start here. Religious progress, okay? Except for a brief notice in our limited space, this important subject okay, like American literature, must be left to separate works. All right, bear with me. Again, this is a very old book. All right. The most striking feature in our early colonial history is found in the Puritanism of New England. All right. But the rigors of Puritanism established by law in all the New England states, except Rhode Island, were softened by the changing of the times, and a movement to disestablish it was at length successful. Vermont, the first to separate church and state, did so in 1807. Massachusetts, the last, did so in 1834 after a long agitation. Meantime, the main body of Puritans took the name congregational, excuse me, while a portion that had split off became the Unitarian Association. The English or Episcopal Church had been established in Maryland, Virginia, and the two Carolinas, but in all of these, it was disestablished before the close of the Revolution. All right, Revolutionary War, I believe they're talking, or the Revolution. Many of the Royalists who fled from the country were members of this church. In fact, the church was almost ruined by the war. It also suffered from the fact that it did not have an American episcopate. But in 1784, Samuel Seabury was consecrated and became the first American bishop. There's your first American bishop. This is 1784. This is the United States Constitution. The United States was 1789. So this is even before that. Okay, moving on. The Roman Catholics residing chiefly in Maryland and Pennsylvania were not numerous during the colonial period, though they constituted almost the only church in Mexico, South, and Central America. Okay, the first Catholic bishop in the United States was John Carroll. Okay, consecrated at Baltimore in 1790. Now this is when the United States, well, actually 1 year after the United States, 1789. Okay, so this is the first Catholic bishop in the United States, consecrated at Baltimore in 1790. The growth of the church thereafter was very rapid, chiefly through immigration. That's an important fact there. Okay, the more the people came in, they gave them this religion, right? And John Carroll, again, was the first Catholic bishop in the United States, 1790, all right? And then the church grew very rapidly, and with a focus on the immigration. The Presbyterian Lutheran churches were early planted in Pennsylvania. When the new settlements of the West took definite form, the Presbyterian was the first missionary church to work among them. Let me repeat that. When the new settlements of the West took definite form, the Presbyterian was the first missionary church to work among them. Okay? No other church in our history has had greater social and political influence. I want you to focus on the two descriptors here. Social and political influence. Do you know what politics are? Do you know what they are? What politics are? The study of government, the science of government, the study of government is two words. Govern means to control. Ment comes from the Latin mentes, meaning the mind or the head. All right, the study of how to control the mind or the head. All right, so once again, now, no other church in our history has had greater social and political influence than has the Presbyterian. Okay, the Lutherans could boast a strong leader in Henry Melchior, I believe that is, Muhlenberg, the Lutheran Patriarch of Philadelphia, a notable figure of the Revolutionary period. He was the father of the famous, quote, fighting parson, unquote, of Virginia and of the first Speaker of the House of Congress. The Lutheran and Reformed churches labored under the handicap of not having European feeders that used the English language. but both overcame it in a large measure by missionary work among the immigrants, again, of their respective faiths. Okay? The Methodists and Baptists were the great missionary churches of the early period, and in point of numbers, they came to lead all other Protestant churches in America. Who did? The Methodists and Baptists. The Methodists coming first and the Baptists closely following. Both founded missions on the frontier, following hard upon the Presbyterians. Hard upon the Presbyterians. Their passionate emotional appeals and their simple forms of worship won the people, and they made many converts. How did they do it? Their passionate, emotional appeals and their simple forms of worship won the people, and they made many converts. Does it say God won them over? Huh? No. It says that their passion. So they were excited about what they were doing. Passion is fire. So everybody they came in contact with, or the most people that they came in contact with, were astounded by their passion, their fire, their conviction. And that won the people over, and the people became converts. Didn't say anything about God, the power of God, anything like that, right? So sometimes great religious gatherings in the woods, known as camp meetings, continued for many days and were characterized by intense religious excitement. Okay? The Methodist Episcopal Church in America was organized at Baltimore in 1784, and Francis Asbury was made the first bishop. The Baptists, though they never made great headway in Europe, were destined to become a great factor in the religious life of America. The religious life of America. Part of my contention and my discussion point is just that. The religious life of America. Okay? All of the above mentioned denominations and a few smaller ones have founded colleges. There's your indoctrination. And seminaries, and on the whole have played a very great part in the educational as well as the religious development of the country. Okay? Moving forward, you will get where I'm going with this momentarily. Going over just a little bit further here. I'm laying down my premise before I go in on the topic. Church progress. We noted in a previous chapter the great change in the church life of the country during the half century following the Revolution. I want you to notice they keep referring to the Revolution, because on the other side of this revolution, you have this church progress, this church age, what have you, in the Americas. You have this passion that caused many converts on the heels of the revolution. You see, when you take people to war, when people are feeling hopeless, this is an opportune time, all right, to create a narrative and to push agendas, because people tend to panic. They vibrate on a lower vibratory scale, all right, and when they don't have hope must be presented. And I contend that more times than not, it's man that does the presenting, not an ethereal being from somewhere in the sky. It's the hand of man. That man is the common denominator that's always trying to present hope to people. Moving on. Revolution. Okay, resulting in the disestablishment of the Episcopal Church in New York and the South, and of the Puritan Church in New England. Okay, it remains to notice the general religious progress of the country in its later development. Since Massachusetts separated church and state in 1834, the most obvious attempt to reunite them in any American state was that of the Mormons of Utah. Owing to the large number of independent churches or denominations in the United States, a union of church and state would be very impractical, next to impossible. Let me read that again. Owing to the large number of independent churches or denominations in the United States, a union of church and state would be very impractical, next to impossible. Nor would such a union be desirable. The churches supported voluntarily offerings and working in friendly rivalry with one another. Look at this. They were supported by voluntary offerings by their own constituents, each individual denomination. And they were working in a friendly rivalry with one another. You see this? This is no different than a business. A business is a friendly rivalry with one another. Two businesses don't necessarily fire upon each other with bombs and guns. But it is a rivalry nonetheless. You have a church on every street corner, and especially in the ghettos and hoods of a particular city, don't you? Right? Only rivaled by maybe the liquor stores, right? But it's a friendly rivalry with one another, okay? Let me look at this footnote right here about the Mormons. The Mormon Church was organized in 1830 in New York by Joseph Smith, who professed to have found some golden tablets revealed to him by an angel. This is the beginning, the start of every religion. Someone has some kind of a hallucination, you know, it says that they saw an angel or something that told them to do this. Remember, Constantine said that he had a dream of a burning cross. Remember? Okay. He published them as the Golden Bible. Is that why the pages are lined in gold on a Bible? Or the Book of Mormon? It gave an account of an ancient tribe who had migrated to the New World under the guidance of their prophet Mormon. Smith declared the religion based on this book to be the only true religion. Is your religion, is your church claiming that you have the one true God? Because every religion is claiming that. We're going to go into religion here in a short while. This is your day of the sun. This is your Sunday. This is the day of enlightenment for yourself. All right. He soon had a following, of course, but the sect proved so undesirable that it was driven from one place to another. To Ohio, to Missouri, and to Illinois. In 1847, it migrated to Utah and settled about Great Salt Lake. The Mormons had made polygamy one of the cornerstones of doctrine. Meantime, before this migration to Utah, the sect had split and the branch broken off settled at Lamoni, or I think that's Lamoni, Iowa. This branch, composed of an excellent class of people, repudiates polygamy and refuses all connection with the Mormons of Utah. So even a rivalry there, and it's all in the same religion. It's a business. It's a business. In 1896, Utah became a state, but not until the Mormons had been forced by act of Congress to give up polygamy. An act by Congress. Now politics are involved, mandating that, hey, you want to become a state, right? The Mormons, you have to give up polygamy. All right, let's move on. This gets better. This is religion 101. The churches, supported by voluntary offerings and working in friendly rivalry with one another, are, hopefully you can see that there, are far more vigorous and progressive than they could possibly be if supported by taxation. What? What? Wait a minute. Let's read that again. It says, let's read this again. I want to make sure we have the proper context on this. Owing to the large number of independent churches or denominations in the United States, a union of church and state would be very impractical, next to impossible. Nor would such a union be desirable. The churches, supported by voluntary offerings and working in friendly rivalry with one another, are far more vigorous and progressive than they could possibly be if supported by taxation. It's a business. And this consideration right here is business. How are the churches more profitable? Letting them be to themselves or having them be supported through taxation? In another sense, the church and state are very closely united. The constitutional guarantee of religious liberty means that the state must protect all religious bodies, unless, as in the case of the Mormons, they violate the laws of the land. Remember, they were saying either you give up polygamy, all right, or you can't be a state. On the other hand, the church is a necessary bulwark of the state. It trains for good citizenship. Religion, y'all. Oh, it's on the side of the government. Don't get it twisted because you see separation of church and state. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. That's not what it's really about. The state needs the church because it trains for good citizenship. Nearly all our presidents, a great majority of our statesmen and public men have been members of the church. By keeping religion and politics apart is meant that a religious body must be nonpartisan and non-political as an organization. See, you thought it was protection per se for the church. That's not what the separation of church and state means. This is the separation of church and state is protecting the political realm. You see, the church cannot be partisan. It cannot be political as an organization. That's the separation of church and state. That was why. Not to protect it. Look, but the more religious men and women enter public office, the better for the state. Let's look at what Coolidge said. President Coolidge in an address, I do not know of any source of moral power or any adequate support for our form of government except that which comes from religion. Did you just pick up what we've just put down? The political agenda needs the church because, as Coolidge says, once again, and I quote, I do not know of any source of moral power. So where does moral power come from as per Coolidge? The church, religion, or any adequate support. Now you might have grown up as I did hearing about the blessed nation, in God we trust, that God shines down on America and what have you. But Coolidge is saying that the adequate support for the form of government is religion. This is how we push our narratives and our agendas. It must be recognized that our civilization, as that of every other civilized nation in the world's history, has been built up on the religious beliefs and practices of the people as its chief cornerstone. It did not say God. It's the religious belief and practices, the social norms. So they're hoping that you go through their schools and their colleges and universities so that you can become indoctrinated and therefore formulate a religious belief and practices that will become the chief cornerstone of their form of government. Are you picking up what we're putting down? Let's read a little bit more and then I'll get into more of my lecture here. This is what we're dealing with, y'all. The churches have been severely criticized by some writers as not meeting the spiritual wants of the age. But the school system and government itself have been equally criticized. The clergy is sometimes spoken of as foggyish and behind the times. But it is possible that the clergy are as full abreast of the times as, are the medical or legal profession, the merchant or the laboring class. That the American people have not lost interest in the church is proved by the fact that the membership, this is a membership, this is a organization, this is a business enterprise, that the membership of the great religious bodies have gained in the past 100 years, that's profitable, faster than the population as a whole, in spite of the fact that religious qualifications for voting and holding office were long ago removed. See, at one point in time, you couldn't vote unless you met certain religious qualifications. Are you seeing the man-centered ideology here? The basis and foundation for what you now know as religion. Very little is being said about one true God or holiness or spirituality, is it? Very little is being spoken of in that regard. You're seeing man, organizations, business, enterprise. All right? Let's move on. Talking about the qualification for voting and holding office were long ago removed. And the further fact that our state universities and public schools make no distinctions on account of religion. It is no doubt true that church attendance has decreased, especially among Protestants. Many yield to the allurement of the automobile. Some listen to the church service in their homes by means of the radio. In other words, they're still engaged. They just may not attend the church. So yeah, church attendance may have decreased, but they ain't gone nowhere. They're still loyal to the business enterprise. And there is a deeper cause. An increasing number of people take refuge in the fact that Protestant theology makes salvation dependent on personal heart relations with God and not upon exactitude of personal performances. In other words, you know, this new Protestant theology says, hey, come as you are. You don't have to attend the church. Just have a personal heart relationship with God. You don't have to be exact about your practice, about your performance. You don't have to be here every Sunday. Going on. Morals and conduct are, on the other hand, improving. Because that's the center of it all. How do you get mankind to behave themselves in such a way as not to negatively affect the commerce and trade, the business and functionality of this grand experiment known as the United States of America? Because when it comes down to it, it's always been about the bottom line. How do you keep people docile? How do you keep people from raging against the machine? You bring and introduce religion. And I know some people are out there saying, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. But we're going to talk about religion in a minute here. And we'll see if you fit the bill. Here, right here. Dueling among us is a thing of the past. See that? Rough and tumble fighting, as in the early days, widespread drunkenness, and a few other vices are less prevalent than formerly. Even corruption in public life of the Tweed brand of a half century ago would hardly be possible today in any American city. Our elections are far less corrupt than they were a few decades ago. We are bad enough yet, goodness knows, but we are growing better. At least we think we are. And if we are, the chief cause is the influence of the Christian church. So yeah, we'll give kudos to the organization of the church. We'll give kudos. We won't take away from it. We're not going to take away from it. It's a good thing because guess what it does? Guess what it does? It causes people to be docile. It causes our society to run a little bit more smoothly. The wheels of politics are not so corrupt and what have you. You know, people aren't so drunk anymore because they have this reverence and fear for the unseen God, right? In fact, on one of my last posts, let me see if I can pull this up for you real quick. Okay, one moment. I gotta switch this here. Go to 3. All right. Here we go. So there's a saying or a quote here. And I believe it's by Voltaire. Here we go. Right here. We'll just pick this one. This, here, I'll zoom in for you to see. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but it means if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. This statement by Voltaire was so famous that Flaubert included it in his Dictionnaire I don't speak French. And it is still frequently quoted today, but where does it first appear and what precisely did Voltaire mean when he wrote it? Does it imply, as most of Voltaire's parrots seem to suppose, that God is a fictitious being created for the comfort of the human race? In its original form, the statement first appeared in a verse epistle from 1768, addressed to the anonymous author of a controversial work, The Three Impostors. According to Voltaire, listen to this. This was a virulently atheistic text that denied the existence of a divine being. He found that this was extremely dangerous. Was an extremely dangerous work. Who did? Voltaire. What did he find dangerous? The Three Impostors. That basically was atheistic. Okay? Voltaire said this is dangerous because why? It put into question a notion that was very useful for society. The idea that criminals would be punished in the afterlife. Thus, even when policing was insufficient, there was a strong deterrent against crime. Do you see what is going on here? Voltaire is telling the masses that this Three Impostors writing, right, which was atheistic, in other words, denying the existence of God, was extremely dangerous. Why? Because it put into question something that was useful for society, something that was used for the purposes of keeping society docile, peaceful, or at the very least, in fear of punishment in the afterlife. So that even if they didn't have adequate policing, it still created a strong deterrent for crime. Because people feared what? The existence of a God that could punish them in the afterlife. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Let's look at religion for a moment here as we get ready to wind up here. What is religion? By definition, we're going to go to the Edamon Online. Here it is. Religion. Hopefully you can read that. I can zoom in probably one more time. What is religion? It comes from the 12th or circa 1200, Reli-Gion. The state of life. Now, if you've been around here for any amount of time, you know that when they use that terminology, especially in the legal sphere, when you see state of being, state of life, state of condition, that phrase can be summed up in one term, which is status. So religion is the status of being bound by what? Monastic vows. This is religion. If you are participating in religion, I know you're going to claim to be spiritual, not religious, but just stick with me. We'll deal with that. Religion, again, is the status of being bound by monastic vows. Let's look at monastic. Monastic, relating to monks. Can you see it? I want to make sure that you can see it. Nuns, or others living under religious vows, or the buildings in which they live. You know, like a monk in the life of solitude, maybe not having sex, never even probably touched a woman, you know, not participating in the natural goings on of humanity, right? A nun, right? Probably virgin all of their lives, no children perhaps. I'm not sure what goes on now, but you know, or others living under religious vows. What's a vow? So they're living under a solemn promise or statement, one by which a person is bound to an act, service, or condition, such as a marriage, to promise solemnly, to bind or commit by a vow. Can we say a contract? What does it mean to be bound? Here we're at the free dictionary. Bind, to impose what kind of obligation? Legal obligations. This is man-made obligations, a man-made duty upon a person or party to an agreement. Can you say contract? To bind. Binding, contracts. These words are applied to the contract entered into between a master and an apprentice. The latter is said to be bound. Okay? What was this in? Here, we'll get to that in a moment. So, to be in religion, you take on a status of being bound by a service, a religious service, a vow. You take a contract, right? A solemn promise or statement. You become married to, right? subject to your master. You become the apprentice. Okay? Also, action or conduct indicating a belief in a divine power and reverence for and desire to please it. Piety, devotion, religious community, and directly from the Latin, religionum, respect for what is sacred, reverence for the gods, conscientious, sense of right, moral obligation, fear of the gods. See? Remember, what did Voltaire say? If there was not a God, it would be necessary to create one. Why? To keep the people in line through fear of the afterlife, punishment in the afterlife. Keep social order, right? Here's the new world order. Divine service, religious observance, a religion, a faith, a mode of worship, cult, sanctity, holiness, a monastic life. Moving forward, this noun of action was derived by Cicero from, look at this, religere, meaning go through again in reading or in thought, from re, which means again, right, plus legere, read, but more importantly, stay with me, see lecture, okay? However, popular etymology among the later ancients, Servius, Lactantius, Augustine, and the interpretation of many modern writers connects it with this one, religere, look, to bind fast. Wouldn't that be consistent with a vow, a monastic vow? To be bound. See, rely. See, religion, you rely, you're bound. Taking government handouts, subsidies, right? Because what the government wants to keep you docile, wants to keep you in order. So they institute religions to do so. Remember, the separation of church and state, it doesn't have to do with what you thought it did. It's protecting the state, not protecting the church. Remember, the church is not under their definitions. The church cannot be political, cannot be biased, can't be partisan. Okay? Moving on, via the notion of place an obligation on, rely, right? Or bond between humans and gods. In that case, the re would be intensive. Another possible origin is religions, I think, careful opposite of, okay. In English, the meaning, particular system of faith in the worship of a divine being or beings is by circa 1300. The sense of recognition of an allegiance in manner of life, okay, to a higher unseen power or powers is from 1530s. All right, so I think you get the point. Now, let's just take a look at this real quick, because there's a correlation of this word, okay, and perhaps this word, rely, okay? Watch this. We're talking about religion. You see this word here? Legal. Of or pertaining to the law, or directly from Latin legalis, legalis, pertaining to the law, from lex, an enactment, a precept, regulation, principle. Isn't this government here? Rule, formal proposition for a law, motion, bill. Here, a contract, arrangement, or contrivance. This probably is related to, look, legere, meaning to gather. What is religion? From Proto-Indo-European root leg, to collect, to gather. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Same derivative where we get the legal from. And what in the scriptures is Yeshua always condemning those those part of that legalistic system in society, wasn't he? In the scripture, at least, always going after those, making, what was it called? When he whipped the money changers out of the temple, they were trading in humans, putting people into debt and what have you, and imprisoning them and taking their whole estates and whatever. Yeah, the legal system. All right, so remember, religion, it binds you, to bind fast. Okay? This is what I contend is going on here. And again, defaulting back to the book, let me get back to my shot. Going back to the book, now you can kind of see the establishment of this religious system, right? You can see how governments, it is in a sense a friend, all right? A friend to the government. Because it protects the government. It protects the government. They want the church to be progressive. They want the American people to have interest in the church. Okay? They want the membership to grow. And they don't even care if the membership, as it said in the book, they don't even care if the membership is in person per se. Okay? You can sit at home and today on YouTube and go to church, right? But just be engaged is the point. All right? Remember, it said that this religion, the church, it trains. Let me show you once again before we get going. What does it say? It trains for good citizenship. This is the separation of church and state. Okay? Don't you teach against our political realm. You're to be an apolitical entity. Okay? Keep the people docile. Keep them engaged. President Coolidge, remember, I do not know of any source of moral power or any adequate support for our form of government except that which comes from religion. It must be recognized that our civilization, as that of every other civilized nation in the world's history, has been built up on the religious beliefs and practices of the people as its chief cornerstone. And that's what it all comes down to, y'all. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. Take it for what it is. Take it personal or don't. But it's time for the people to start waking up. And as I said several times now, I know people will say, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And that's fine. I've said the same thing. It's okay to be in tune with oneself, to think outside of themselves if you want to. But I contend that we should walk circumspect, be very careful about always looking outside of yourself. All right, because that's how governments were established in the first place, right? The government, it was established because common folk didn't want to pull their own weight, perhaps, or per se, they didn't want to pull their own weight. So they looked outside of themselves to establish this government that would keep everybody in line, because people stopped self-governing. And when you stop self-governing, then you look for someone else to govern you. All right. And then you find later on that the government as established, that is run by mankind, ends up becoming somewhat corrupt or tyrannical. And then you find yourself in your generations to come complaining about the very governments that the forefathers and foremothers established. And that's because until people get back to the knowledge that you can self-govern yourself, all right, and stop fearing, the afterlife and this God that's going to punish you in the afterlife, which is as Voltaire said, is a necessary weapon. Until we overcome that, we're going to keep going through these societal declines, and people are going to get more and more lazy, more and more unhealthy, less accountable and responsible. And that's what's going to happen. It's a fallout that is inevitable. Okay, and so when you look around the landscape today and you see what is going on in the political realm, you want to blame Biden, you want to blame Trump, you want to blame. It really doesn't depend upon who is set up as the proverbial God or Caesar or what. It does not matter. It matters what you are doing, the decisions you are making on a day-to-day basis. All right, can you self-govern? Are you fearful of self-governance? I mean, I hear people say, when you mention something about self-government, self-governance, that's anarchy. Or if there are no police, if there is no government, the people are going to go crazy, the people are going to go wild. So I kindly say, or respectfully say to people that have that ideology, do you think that humans are mostly good or mostly evil, bad, if there was such a thing? Which one do you think? And do you know, I'm not surprised, but are you surprised to know that more people say that there's more evil than there is good? And then I challenge that and I say, well, how can that be possible? That means every 2 times, let's say you walk out of your house, you're either going to get shot, you're going to get run over by somebody, you're going to get robbed. If there are more evil than there are good, and I also challenge by bringing to light the fact that everywhere I've seen, whenever a car bursts into flames and there are people in that car, and I've seen strangers pull over on the side of the freeway and pull people out of the car, risking their life and limb, willing to be burned themselves or perhaps caught in a combustible fire or an explosion. And they disregard the danger to themselves for the sake of the other, for the other human. I've seen, I was driving down the street the other day, and there were several cars pulled over on the side of the road in a weird, like an angle park with the doors wide open. And I'm wondering what's going on. I come across the lights and I see a young boy, and he's in his underwear, right? Naked everywhere else, but just in his underwear. And there are several people surrounding him, or kind of backed off, kind of not to strike fear into him, so maybe he doesn't run. And they were trying to talk with him as I drove by, and it was obvious that this little boy was probably lost. And several cars pulled over. Who knows what they had to do that day? Who knows what they might have had to get some work done or whatever like that. Whatever. It does not matter is the point. The people were willing to stop and take care of their fellow human. Okay. And so I see this every day. Every day you turn on the news, and they're not going to highlight that, mind you, right? The news narrative is always going to show you the negative of how dastardly evil humans are. That's all you're going to see pumped on the mainstream media. But I don't believe that. And you shouldn't either. All right. And perhaps we need to start highlighting more of the good that people do. All right. And maybe perhaps we will stop relying through religion from governments. Maybe we'll start to take accountability, because it's going to be us. No government is going to set us straight as far as a people, as far as a whole, as far as a community. All right. The only thing I notice that whenever there's an introduction of government, there also comes an introduction of diversion or diversity. Maybe if we didn't focus so much on our diversity and we lived and let live, maybe we would have greater peace. Maybe if we didn't try to set up so many governments wherein then there's militaries established and whatever, maybe we wouldn't be dropping bombs on our neighbors. The only winners in the formations of government, if you haven't noticed, are those elite that sit on top. Those are the ones who win. The people never win. Do you ever feel like you're winning under government? And I'm not. With respect, all right, I'm not anti-government, but I'm trying to culture a self-governance, a responsibility, a respect, accountability, and all those other things. All right, I'm not trying to say get rid of government. All right, render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's. If you feel like you need governance, then by all means be governed. But I think the people should be able to choose. All right. You should be able to choose. That's all I'm saying. All right. With that being said, I think I've been on long enough. We're just under an hour. We are live every Wednesday right here, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I was thinking about doing more of a Sunday type of deal like this, just to kind of keep keep the mind flowing, all right, and maybe do something a little bit different. And so if you appreciate this type of content and this content and this type of research and study, feel free to support us here. But otherwise, catch us on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We got a lot of interesting things going on. Please look into the archives. Please go over to our Telegram. We have a Telegram. It's KnowledgeWell University. So just download or upload the app on your phone or on your computer. It's KnowledgeWell University, but go to the Telegram and upload the app. Other than that, yeah, just hit us up at our YouTube channel. You can look in the description of this and other videos to find other links to other offerings that we have, all right? But anyways, just consider these things, all right? Is religion really necessary? Is it teaching you to be accountable, or is it teaching you to rely on things outside of yourself when it's our personal accountability that is going to make the change, all right? And with that being said, now you've been made free. The question is, what are you going to do with it? We're here once again every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you next time for our next upload. Courtney, signing out.